A shiny new week, 4 more discussion topics selected by you, a whole new conversation. Welcome back to 360 Speedway. Hello, Derek Smith here, welcoming you back to 360 Speedway HQ. Another week behind us, another fresh week lies ahead. Thanks for looking in here on episode 8. And for your support along the way. We sincerely hope that you are enjoying the 360 Speedway output as much as we're enjoying creating it for you. Another new week, a whole new conversation, another fresh lineup for you to enjoy this week. Let's introduce them now. They've all already well-known faces on the 360 Speedway circuit. First of all, if I press the right button, let me reintroduce the rinky-dink panther, as I'm going to call him from now on. That's Carol Johnson. Welcome back, Carol.
Evening all.
Next up, he's now become a regular here in 360 Speedway, a popular member of the 360 team. Welcome back, Nigel Crabtree. Say something, Nigel.
Thank you.
Look pleased, Nigel. And then finally, and not least, of course, a regular and a popular member of the 360 team, Stuart Robson. Welcome back on camera. Thanks very much for joining us. Collectively, this week's Handlebar Heroes for episode 8. Usual disclaimer applies. All of the opinions and views expressed by all of us tonight are those of ours. They're ours alone, and not necessarily those of any Speedway associations that we still have. It always makes me sleep better at night when I say that out loud. Okay, so collectively this week's Handlebar Heroes, let's get on with the action. You have voted, we have listened, and as ever, 4 fans' pulse topics, discussion topics for us to get amongst tonight. And we're going to kick off with a bit of a chat around what has now become an embedded part of British Speedway, a much keener dependency operationally on weather strategy. What do I mean by weather strategy? Well, back in the day, most of us used to venture along to the track, hail, rain or shine even, and we spent many an hour there waiting sometimes for the rain to pass. That's less of a thing these days because, by and large, certainly in British Speedway, through observation, I think clubs now pay much more close attention to weather forecasts. I dare say the reliability, the accuracy, the sophistication of weather forecasting has improved over the decades. And nowadays, it's not uncommon that British clubs will make a call on a fixture sometimes up to 24 hours before the event. So guys, listen, before we maybe identify some benefits and pros and cons of that particular strategy, am I right, first of all, to think that this is a much more modern day phenomena? Because back in the day, we didn't pay too much attention to weather forecasts. Carol, do you want to come in and give your view on that?
I think obviously it's certainly a modern day thing. You know, I can remember when I first started in Speedway, and you'd race in any conditions. But now it's more focused around that forecast, and we've been caught out with it at Peterborough at times. But then we've also, praised it at times. So we've used it in both ways, and you do get criticised when you call a meeting after 24 hours before, and you pray for the rain to come. Sometimes it doesn't. But it's majority of the time we've been quite lucky, and it has rained, and the meeting would have been called off.
I tell you what, Carol, it's always a blessed relief when you make that early call and the weather, the predicted weather actually manifests right on cue, and you know that in that instant that you made absolutely the right decision.
Oh, 100%. And like I say, we have been caught out in the past at Peterborough, calling it off early, and you obviously do get criticised by supporters. But we also look at who we're racing against. So if it's a local derby, obviously you've got more time to call a meeting off, because less travelling time. Whereas when we was in the Championship, if it was Plymouth or Glasgow, Edinburgh, you don't want the fans to travel for no reason. So yeah, it can benefit people because you can get on race day, have 5 gates open, people come in, it rains at 6 o'clock and they complain that you've not called the meeting off. But we couldn't predict that at the time. So yeah, it has worked in our favour at times, but yeah, it has gone against us.
Nigel, let's bring you in. As I'm sure you can imagine, Nigel, when you're a speedway promotion, you're in a rock and a hard place when you come up against some adverse weather, etc. But would you tend to support the change in policy, Nigel, and would you deem to be the early call-off strategy as a good thing for speedway?
Yes, I think so. The promoters, I don't necessarily always agree with what promoters do, but on this one, they can't win, can they? Like Carl just said, if they call it off too soon and it doesn't rain, they get called for calling it off. If they don't call it off and it rains and then people stood about waiting for the rain to stop, they complain about that. So the promoters can't win on this one, unfortunately. It's just the weather and that's how it is. I think the other big deciding factor of it all is, I think everywhere's struggling to get crowds in on a nice sunny day. Never mind when the weather's very iffy, like people, they maybe haven't got that kind of money and don't want to risk wasting, I don't know what it is, 15, 20 quid, going to a speedway meeting, get in, run 3 or 4 races and then it get called off. And unfortunately, this goes back years and years and years when speedway promoters would push a meeting on to get past 6 races years ago, and then the meeting called off and nobody got the money back. And your older supporters can remember them days. The new ones obviously don't. And also another deciding factor in it as well, the riders won't ride when it's wet. I always remember one of your men from Glasgow, one of the best blokes I ever really dealt with, Trent Leverington. And we was at Stoke one night and it was quite wet and referee come down. I can't remember who it was. Strong referee said, the meeting's on. That's it. And Trent turned around and said, well, if we don't want to get mucky, we have to go road racing. And that's speedway, isn't it? It's dirt track, it's shale. Yeah. You're going to get wet. Every night isn't going to be ideal. But the riders nowadays, they seem to pick and choose when they want to ride and the referees don't seem to have any say in it. Yeah. But again, that's only my opinion.
Hello, Trent, if you're watching from down under. Rob, will bring you in on this. Over the years, I think it's probably fair to say that, and Nigel's alluded to it a little bit, speedway fans tend to be hypersensitive to the elements and to weather. And over the years, to Nigel's more serious point, every supporter over the course, at least once and probably multiple times, set off for a meeting or even sat out in the car park outside. There was no way that the meeting could ever take place, right? But promoters run it to the wire, sometimes went beyond start time before they made the call off. So the early call off strategy from a supporter's point of view has got to be a good thing, right? Because you can replan, it saves you effort, it saves you cost, and it saves you having a complete waste of time, right?
Yes, 100%. Yeah, definitely. It's better all around, isn't it? And the early call off can save the promoter money as well a lot of the time because it doesn't have to pay the riders' travel costs and the paramedic costs. Because if a paramedic turns up at the track, you have to pay them, and even whether the meeting goes ahead or not, I think because you've got to cancel them before they leave, really. So it saves a lot of costs, and it saves a lot of costs for. Both sides of it, really, riders and promotion and fans, so all 3 sides there.
Yeah, it's an expensive sport to follow, it's an expensive sport to participate in, so any cost savings I'm sure are hugely appreciated. Carol, one element to the early call-off thing though, and I might be wrong on this, right? I could be wrong, but is there a potential that early call-off strategy can be used tactically by clubs?
Yeah, of course it can. Especially if you've got a rider that is travelling, certainly if they're coming from abroad and they're going to struggle, obviously we know what riders are going to turn up at what times, and if they miss a flight in the morning, the last thing you want to do is have a guest or just a reserve in basically to cover him, because you don't always get a facility, and certainly not for a rider not showing anyway. So yeah, there is that element to it. Not that we've done it not for weather anyway. We've done it for other things, but not for the weather.
And Nigel, I'm just thinking, it's probably something we should all Google, but I don't know how many discrete weather apps that there are available, but there must literally be hundreds of them, right? There are hundreds, and I even know, I'm pretty sure, I can't remember precisely who it is, but I'm pretty sure there's a British Speedway promotion who use a weather map that is hosted in like Norway or Finland or somewhere, because reputationally it's meant to be pretty damned accurate. But it must just add an element of headache, I imagine, to be in a Speedway promotion when you've got to not only get all your ducks in a row and do all the operational things that you need to prepare to open the gates, but you've got to keep an eye on the blooming clouds as well.
Yeah. I mean, you feel for everybody, don't you? Because the promoters, they're not making thousands and thousands of pounds a meeting, are they? Some are struggling to keep their head above water. And it's the right thing to do. They're doing the right thing, like Robbo says, they're doing the right thing for the supporters. From somebody to travel 200 miles, 100 miles up the road, it all costs money, and I think it benefits everybody. And the other side of it is, it's not as if we've got a full season, is it, of 27, 28 home meetings like we used to have a few years ago. Probably teams now, I don't know, am I right saying maybe 12, 13 home meetings in a season? Yeah. So there is plenty time to try and get them meetings fitted in, in whenever in the future, like. So there's no point in risking it, really, I don't think.
That's a very good point, Nigel. It is a very good point. And I'm just thinking, Stuart, in terms of, let's not go into global warming and all that stuff, but, there is a school of thought that, if the science is undoubted, as people argue that it is, that maybe in this day and age, Speedway needs to rely on weather maps and needs to have adopted a weather strategy, because typically the climate appears to be a bit, it seems unbelievable to say it, but a bit wetter than it always has been.
Yeah, and it's really unpredictable as well, isn't it? I mean, like sitting here now, it's been a beautiful day where I am here today, and it's just rained all of a sudden. Like I've been speaking about it, and it just seems to come out of nowhere. But they've got to adapt something. I mean, what they do, I guess, it seems to be working. It'd be nice if we could have stadiums with roofs on, covers. But unfortunately, there just isn't the support or the backing of financial support within the sport to do that. But it'd be nice if we could do something like that.
Nigel, just to bring you back in again, you mentioned earlier on about the attitude of riders to race on a wet track, right? And I know there's wet tracks and there's wet tracks, right? But back in the day, I was brought up, I cut my teeth watching Speedway, and whenever it did rain and tracks were saturated, track staff would pour 28 bags of sawdust on it. The riders would pull on boiler suits, and they would just get on with it, right?
Yeah, times have changed, haven't they? Times have changed, engines have changed. I don't know if it's for the better or for the worse. If you speak to people, they'll tell you that laydowns have ruined it. I don't know. I do think the riders nowadays, without sounding too but they don't want to ride unless conditions are perfect, or pretty much it seems that way sometimes, not all the time. And if it's going to be a bit wet, it's going to be a bit wet, isn't it? But again, then you'll get your crowd saying it's processional, it should have been rained off. So again, there's so many different scenarios, isn't there? And the supporters, the promoters, I think, are trying to do the right thing, calling it off early. because, like we just said, we haven't got a 28-week season or anything like that anymore. So really, there should be plenty of time to fit it in a later date. Hopefully, weather be better.
Yes.
Sure. So I don't know. Don't know.
See, and from a promoter's side, what we have to think of as well is if you've got 4 or 5 foreign riders in your team, they have a clause in their contract that they get paid a set amount when they fly into the UK, even if the meet is rained off. So that's potentially about £250 per meeting. So if you've got 4 or 5 that have flown in for that meeting that evening and it's called off, we still have to pay them. So we pay them that cost plus their travel. So all of a sudden, you've got sort of £2,000 going out, but you've got nothing coming in to cover that. So you protect yourself from that area as well as a promotion. So that's sometimes why there is an early call off.
That makes complete sense, and in fact that adds weight to the very fact that British Speedway more and more appears to pay attention to forecasts and make early call-offs. Listen, I think that there's pros and cons as there are with everything in life and everything in Speedway, but I think, in my view at least, when you weigh everything up, it's a beneficial thing. Unless there's some tactical use of these things, I wouldn't like to think that clubs are taking advantage because no one's, to my understanding, no one's scrutinising call-offs or whether it does or whether it doesn't rain. But anyway, listen, that gets us up. We're up and running already for episode 8. That's Fans Pulse Lap 1 completed. Out at home, what's your thoughts on the weather strategy that British Speedway in particular seems to have adopted? Are you in favour of it? What are those pros and cons in as far as you think? Please write in and share your own views.